Welcome back, everyone. I'm absolutely thrilled to have you here for another explainer. Today, we're unpacking some truly fascinating source notes on one of the most heavily analyzed decades in American history, the 1960s. Specifically, we're zooming in on the Kennedy years. Now, this is a topic where the glittering legend, well, it kind of outshines the gritty historical reality, right? So we're going to stick strictly to the data, the timeline, and the concepts in our source material. We're stripping away all that noise to really explore the tension between the pristine public image of the time and the intense domestic turmoil that was brewing literally right beneath the surface. Okay, let's dive into this. The big question we need to ask is, was the dawn of the 1960s actually a new era of sweeping transformation? Or, and I love how the source material provocatively phrases this, was it just changes, schmanges? Like, was it really just a continuation of the 1950s wrapped up in a shiny new package? I want you to keep this fundamental question right in the back of your mind as we go through today's explainer, because the answer really lies in the deeply complex political realities of the time. Section 1. The 1960 election showdown. Kennedy versus Nixon. You really cannot understand the Kennedy presidency without first understanding the insanely tight race that actually put him in the White House to begin with. Let's look at who was on the ballot. On one side, you've got Richard Nixon. He's a Republican, the sitting vice president, a World War II vet, and he's hailing from the massive political battleground of California. And on the other side, John F. Kennedy, Democrat, sitting senator, also a World War II vet, coming from the powerhouse state of Massachusetts. What immediately jumps out here is just how closely mirrored their resumes actually were. Both men brought serious federal experience and strong military pedigrees to the table. I mean, they were perfectly matched titans heading into those famous, totally unprecedented televised debates. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer tightness of the resulting vote. It is staggering. John F. Kennedy secured 49.7% of the popular vote, while Richard Nixon secured 49.5%. That is a microscopic 0.2% margin. Now, sure, Kennedy did comfortably secure the Electoral College, winning 313 votes to Nixon's 219, but that popular vote, it essentially shows a nation split perfectly right down the middle. And that microscopic win, it had massive political consequences. Because Kennedy didn't win by a landslide, he didn't exactly stroll into the Oval Office with a sweeping public mandate. And because of that, as our source notes explicitly point out, not a whole lot of folks in Congress felt they had to fight for Kennedy's policies. Pushing his domestic agenda forward was going to be an incredibly difficult uphill battle right from day one. He simply didn't have the political capital to force Congress's hand.
Section 2. The Camelot Myth. Crafting the Image.
So, facing a deeply divided Congress and a completely split electorate, the Kennedy administration desperately needed a way to project unshakable power, unity, and idealism. And how did they pull it off? Well, they achieved this by deliberately drawing a direct line from myth to reality. The legendary figures of King Arthur and Queen Guinevere were mapped directly onto John and Jacqueline Kennedy. Think about that for a second. The White House wasn't just an office building anymore. It was cast as a modern-day Camelot. This was a totally brilliant communicative strategy to inspire the public and elevate the presidency way above the mundane, gridlocked political realities of Washington. And this brilliantly illustrates the real tension at the heart of our explainer today. You see, the public was sold this sparkling, idealized legend. But the historical reality? It was clouded by private indiscretions and rapidly escalating social turmoil. The polished imagery was specifically designed to mask all of that. The shiny veneer of the 1960s was, in reality, hiding some incredibly complex and, well, pretty messy truths.
Section 3. Domestic Turmoil. Civil Rights Struggle.
Away from all those glamorous state dinners, the administration was forced to grapple with a nation in the throes of massive structural change. And right at the center of managing these immense domestic pressures was the president's brother, Attorney General Bobby Kennedy. His mandate was effectively split into two absolutely massive, daunting focuses. He had to take on deeply entrenched organized crime while simultaneously managing the explosive rise of the civil rights movement. Talk about a heavy lift. To really understand this civil rights landscape they were stepping into, we need to look at the historical context. On one side, you had the lingering, powerful political influence of the Dixiecrats, a faction that heavily influenced Southern politics from 1948 right up to the 1960 election. But on the other side, you had the rising, undeniable momentum of grassroots activism. Our source material highlights this perfectly with the sit-ins. So you have this deeply entrenched political establishment clashing directly with boots-on-the-ground, grassroots demands for equality. And man, the pressure builds intensely and rapidly. Just look at this timeline. In 1962, James Meredith fights to integrate the University of Mississippi. Then, in 1963 alone, the milestones just erupt. We see the tragic assassination of Medgar Evers, the incredibly powerful Children's March, and that historic I Have a Dream speech echoing across the National Mall. All of this immense, unyielding public pressure absolutely forces the hand of the government, ultimately culminating in the monumental Civil Rights Act of 1964. This wasn't some slow political evolution, it was a rapid, urgent societal reckoning, happening right on the administration's watch. Section 4. The Tragic End. Dallas Campaign Stop. The Kennedy administration, however, would never see the final passage of that 1964 Civil Rights Act. The source notes set the scene for us with chilling specificity. A campaign stop in Dallas, Texas. The weather? 73 degrees, mostly cloudy. It's a remarkably ordinary detail for a day that would completely shatter the nation. Our material draws one final, incredibly poignant parallel here. Just as the legendary court of King Arthur collapsed, the modern Camelot of the Kennedy administration ended in sudden, shocking tragedy. The carefully crafted myth and the complex, turbulent reality collided head-on during that mostly cloudy day in Dallas. So having walked through those razor-thin election margins, the brilliant myth-making of Camelot, and the undeniable explosion of the civil rights movement, I want to leave you with a final thought. Let's go back to our opening question. Did the 1960s actually usher in a new era? Or did the decade simply take the deeply unresolved issues of the 1950s, the profound racial inequality, the bitter political divides, and force them out of the shadows and violently into the light? Take a look at the facts we've covered and ask yourself, when we look back at history, how much is the legend we want to believe and how much is the reality we have to face? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.